The garage door was open. That's what I noticed first, standing in my kitchen with coffee going cold in my hands. I looked at it through the window above the sink. Just looked the door rolled up the space inside dark, even with morning light coming in. Dennis never left it open. 43 years of marriage, and he never once left that door open overnight. But Dennis was gone. 8 months now. I set the coffee down, walked to the back door, opened it. Spring air hit me. Warm for April. The kind of morning Dennis would have been out there already bent over that car with a rag in his hand. I crossed the yard. Grass needed mowing. I kept meaning to call someone. The concrete was cold under my feet. I'd come outside in slippers. The oil stain in the center of the garage floor was dark and familiar. 20 years of the same car sitting in the same spot leaves a mark, but the spot was empty now. Just empty. I stood there looking at nothing. The workbench along the back wall was exactly how Dennis left it. His tools hung on the pegboard, each one outlined in black marker so he'd know where it went. His red toolbox sat closed on the bench. His work journal lay open next to it, pages filled with his small, careful handwriting. The car was gone. My chest went tight. I put my hand on the door frame and breathed. In through the nose, out through the mouth. 43 years as a nurse in the ICU, and I still use the same techniques I taught patients. Breathe, think, act, but I couldn't think past the empty space. I walked to the workbench and picked up the journal. The last entry was dated 3 weeks before Dennis died. His handwriting looked tired, the letters looser than usual. Almost done. 20 years on this beauty. Can't wait to teach Carol to drive her properly. Our retirement road trip starts next summer. I closed the journal, put it back on the bench exactly where it had been. The garage still smelled like him. Motor oil and old leather and that orange hand soap he used. I could see him here. Could almost hear the music he played on that old radio. Classic rock. He'd sing along when he thought I wasn't listening. A car engine sounded outside on Oakwood Drive. I turned. Brian's black BMW pulled into my driveway. Leased, not bought. He'd told me that at Christmas, like I should be impressed. My son got out of the driver's side. 38 years old, and he still wouldn't look me in the eye when he knew he'd done something wrong. Even from across the yard I could see it. The way his shoulders hunched, the way he shoved his hands in his pockets. The passenger door opened. Vanessa stepped out. She was perfect like always. Hair smooth and dark designer sunglasses, clothes that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. She stood beside the car and looked at me standing in the garage. Even with the sunglasses, I could feel her watching. Brian walked toward me, stopped at the edge of the driveway. "Mom," I waited. "I need to talk to you about something." "Where's the car, Brian?" His jaw tightened. "That's what I need to talk about. Where is it I sold it?" The words landed but didn't make sense at first, like he'd spoken in another language and my brain needed time to translate. "You what I sold it yesterday." He looked at the empty garage, then at the ground. "I needed the money. Vanessa has been planning this Paris trip for months. It's important for her business connections. I couldn't let her down." The tightness in my chest spread. My hands were shaking, so I crossed my arms. "That was your father's car. It was just sitting there." His voice went defensive harder. "Dad's gone, Mom. You don't even drive it." It was, is past tense. Brian finally looked at me. His eyes were red around the edges. Tired. "I got a good price for it, too. $15,000. That's fair for a car that old. $15,000 for a car Dennis had spent every weekend working on. For a car he'd restored piece by piece over 20 years. For a car he'd promised would stay in the family. I wanted to yell, wanted to grab my son and shake him until he understood what he'd done. But 43 years in the ICU taught me to keep my voice steady even when everything inside was breaking. "When did you take it yesterday afternoon?" "You were at the store." He still had his key. The one from when he lived here before he moved out, before he met her. I never asked for it back. And Dennis always left the garage unlocked. Said he wanted to be able to get in there quick if he thought of something. "You should have asked me. Would you have said yes?" "No, I wouldn't have." Vanessa walked up then. She moved like she owned the driveway, the yard, the whole street. Stood next to Brian and put her hand on his arm. Her nails were red and perfect. "Carol, we're not discussing this. It's done. The car is sold. We leave for Paris tomorrow." I looked at her, really looked. She'd been married to my son for 2 years, and I still didn't know her. Didn't know where she grew up, or what her parents did, or anything real about her life before Brian. She smiled a lot, but it never reached her eyes. This is between me and my son. I'm his wife. What's between you and him is between all of us. Her voice was pleasant, reasonable, like she was explaining something simple to someone slow. Brian needed that money. The car was sitting unused. It made sense to sell it. It was his father's. His father is dead. She said it flat, matter of fact. And Brian is trying to build a life. We both are. Surely you understand that. I didn't trust myself to speak. Just looked at Brian. He wouldn't meet my eyes again. Vanessa's hand stayed on his arm. Possessive. "We'll send you photos from Paris," Vanessa said. She smiled. "You'd love it there. The architecture, the museums. Very romantic." The casual cruelty of that comment. Like she didn't know what she was saying. Or maybe she did. Brian shifted his weight. "We should go. Still need to pack." "Yes." Vanessa tugged his arm gently. "We have an early flight." They walked back to the BMW. Brian glanced back once, just once. Saw me standing there in Dennis's garage with my arms crossed and my slippers on. Then he got in the car. Vanessa's window rolled down. "Take care of yourself, Carol. We'll see you when we get back." The BMW backed out of the driveway and drove away. I watched until it turned the corner at the end of Oakwood Drive. Then I was alone. I went back into the garage, stood in the center where the oil stain was. The silence was different without the car emptier. The morning sun came through the open door and lit up dust in the air. I picked up Dennis's journal again, opened to that last entry. Read his words about teaching me to drive, about our retirement road trip, about 20 years of work finally finished. His coffee mug was still on the shelf, stained from years of use, handle worn smooth. I'd washed it after he died, but couldn't bring myself to put it away. Everything was here except the car. His tools, his workbench, his radio, the smell of him in every corner, and the empty space where the Shelby should have been. I closed the journal and held it against my chest. The sun was warmer now. Somewhere down the street a dog barked. A lawnmower started up. Normal sounds, normal morning. 8 months of being a widow, and I thought I'd cried all the tears there were. But standing in that garage holding Dennis's journal, looking at the empty space our son had left, I felt them coming again. I locked the garage door, turned off the light, walked back to the house with the journal still in my hands. The empty space where the Shelby should be looked like a wound. The phone rang at 7 in the morning. I'd been awake since 4. I was sitting at the kitchen table with Dennis's journal open in front of me, had been reading the same page over and over. The one where he documented replacing the carburetor, his handwriting, so careful, his measurements exact. The phone kept ringing. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. "Hello, Mrs. Bennett." A man's voice, rough around the edges, like he'd been crying. "This is Tom Graves from Graves Classic Auto. I have your husband's car." I sat up straighter. "What the Shelby? Your son brought it in Wednesday. I need you to come to the dealership, please. Right now, if you can. There's something Dennis wanted you to know." My brain tried to make sense of the words. I don't understand. Dennis was my friend, a good friend. His voice cracked. "I was at his funeral. I should have spoken to you then, but I couldn't. I'm sorry. Please, Mrs. Bennett, can you come?" I remembered him now, vaguely. A man standing in the back at the funeral home. Gray hair, dark suit. He'd left before I could greet anyone. "Where are you?" He gave me the address. Industrial area on the east side of town. I wrote it down on the back of an envelope. "I'll be there in 30 minutes. I got dressed, jeans and a sweater. Found my keys, drove across town with my hands tight on the steering wheel. The morning traffic was light. I passed the hospital where I'd worked for 40 years. The parking lot was already full. The industrial area was all concrete and metal buildings. I found Graves Classic Auto at the end of a long street. The building was clean modern. Rows of vintage cars sat in the front lot behind a chain-link fence, all gleaming in the early sun. A man stood outside the main entrance. Gray hair, maybe 65 jeans and a button-down shirt. He was watching for me. I parked and got out. He walked toward me. His eyes were red. "Mrs. Bennett, thank you for coming. You're Tom, yes." He put out his hand. I shook it. His grip was firm, but his hand was shaking. "I'm Tom Graves. Your husband saved my life 25 years ago." I waited. He looked at the ground, took a breath. "I needed a business loan. Had a dream of opening this place. No bank would touch me. Bad credit, no collateral, just a dream and a lot of nerve." He looked up. Dennis co-signed for me. Risked his own credit and savings for a stranger. I paid back every penny, but the debt went deeper than money. He never told me. He wouldn't have. That's who Dennis was. Tom wiped his eyes. This dealership exists because of him. I've been successful. Built a good life. All because your husband believed in me when no one else did. When your son brought that Shelby in Wednesday, I knew it the second I saw it. Tom's voice went rough. Dennis talked about that car every time we ran into each other. Car shows, auctions, he'd show me pictures on his phone. Tell me about the progress. He was so proud of it. Brian said he sold it. He did. To me. Tom looked sick. Your son had no idea what he was selling. I asked him if he knew the value. He said $15,000 sounded fair. My stomach dropped. What's it really worth? Tom met my eyes. Around $180,000. It's a documented 1967 Shelby GT 500, one of 2048 ever made. Dennis restored it to museum quality. The number didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. $180,000. Yes, ma'am. Brian sold it for $15,000. Yes. I sat down on the curb. Just sat. Tom sat next to me. We stayed like that for a minute, neither of us talking. I bought it from him, Tom said finally. Paid him the $15,000 because he was desperate. Said something about a Paris trip with his wife. But Mrs. Bennett, that car was never mine to keep. Why are you telling me this? Because Dennis made me promise 2 years ago. Tom stood, held out his hand to help me up. Come inside. There's something you need to see. He led me through the building to the garage. The space was huge. White floors, bright lights overhead. 3 cars sat in a row under covers. Tom stopped at the last one, pulled the cover back. The Shelby sat there, gleaming burgundy paint, perfect chrome shining. I walked toward it, slowly put my hand on the hood. The metal was cool and smooth. I could feel Dennis in every line. I opened the driver's door, sat in the leather seat. It smelled like the garage at home. The steering wheel was worn where his hands had gripped it. Tom leaned against the door frame. 2 years ago, Dennis asked me to help him install something. A hidden compartment. I looked up. Why? He said if anything ever happened to him, I needed to make sure you knew about it. Made me swear. Tom gestured to the dashboard behind the radio. I didn't look inside. He said this was for you, and only you. My heart was pounding. Tom showed me how to release the panel. Press here, pull there. The radio face came away, and behind it was a space dark and hidden. Tom stepped back, walked out of the garage, left me alone. I reached into the compartment. My hand touched paper. I pulled out a manila folder, thick and heavy. Under it was a sealed envelope, my name on the front in Dennis's handwriting, and at the bottom a small wooden box with a key inside. I opened the envelope first. Dennis's handwriting filled the page. Dated 2 months before he died. Carol, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry I didn't tell you while I was alive. You would have wanted to handle it together, and I know that, but I needed to protect you from this until I had proof. I've been investigating Vanessa for 18 months. She's not who she says she is. Her real name is Vanessa Cortland. She's done this before, twice that I've found so far. In this folder is everything I've gathered. Photos, documents, contact information for her previous victims. Their stories are the same. She targets men with aging parents and family assets. She's going to target our house, Carol. That's her pattern. She'll convince Brian that you're declining that you need care, that the house should be sold. Then she'll disappear with the money. I confronted her once, carefully watching her reaction. She's very good at what she does. Brian doesn't see it. He won't believe me without ironclad proof, and I don't have it yet. The key in this box is for our safe deposit box at First National. Box 447. Inside are stock certificates I bought in 1994 as a favor to a patient. Check the current value. You're taken care of financially. Tom knows to call you if anything happens to this car. He's a good man. Trust him. Protect yourself. Protect our son. He's a victim in this too. I love you. I'm still protecting you, Dennis. I read it twice, my hands shaking. Dennis knew. He knew about Vanessa. Spent 18 months investigating her. Died before he could finish. I opened the manila folder. Inside were photos. Vanessa at a wedding with a different man. Older gray hair. Another photo. Different wedding. Different man. Marriage certificates. Copies. Vanessa Cortland married Stanley Wright, Phoenix, Arizona, June 2019. Vanessa Cortland married George Murphy, Tampa, Florida, March 2021. Newspaper clippings. Local man reports elderly mother's life savings stolen by daughter-in-law. Another one. Family business sold in suspected fraud case. Pages of Dennis's handwriting. Notes about Vanessa's behavior. Questions she'd asked about our house, about my health, about our assets. Dates and times. At the back, contact information. Phone numbers. Stanley Wright, Phoenix. George Murphy, Tampa. Dennis's final note at the bottom. Need more concrete proof before telling Brian. He won't believe me without it. She's too skilled. If you're reading this and I'm gone, please finish what I started. Protect our son. I closed the folder, held it against my chest. 8 months of me thinking I knew everything about our life together. 8 months of missing him and grieving him. He'd carried this alone. Tears came then, not quiet ones. Deep sobs that shook my whole body. I sat in Dennis's car holding his investigation file and cried for everything he tried to do. Tom came back after a few minutes, stood in the doorway, didn't say anything, just waited. I wiped my face, got out of the car, looked at him. He was protecting me even after he died. Tom nodded. That's who Dennis was. I need to call these men. Stanley and George. I need to know what happened to them. You can use my office. Take all the time you need. I looked at the Shelby. At the car Dennis spent 20 years building. At the secret compartment he'd installed with Tom. At the investigation he'd left for me to finish. She's not going to get away with this. No, Tom said. She's not. Stanley Wright answered on the third ring. His voice sounded tired, like he'd been expecting this call for years. I was in Tom's office. The door closed. Phone on speaker so Tom could witness. My hands were shaking as I dialed. Hello, Mr. Wright. My name is Carol Bennett. I'm calling because my son is married to a woman named Vanessa Cortland. Long silence on the other end. Then a heavy sigh. I wondered when this call would come. I gripped the edge of Tom's desk. Can you tell me what happened? Stanley was 58 years old. He told his story slowly, each word careful, like he'd practiced what to say if someone ever asked. He met Vanessa in the spring of 2019, community center where his mother volunteered. Vanessa was helping organize events. Charming attentive started talking. She seemed genuinely interested in him. His wife had died 3 years before. He was lonely. They dated. She was patient, understanding, made him feel seen again. Married 6 months later. His mother had concerns, said something felt off. Stanley dismissed it, thought she was being overprotective. After the wedding, Vanessa started with small comments. Your mother seems to be slowing down. Have you noticed she forgot my name yesterday? Is that normal? I'm worried about her driving. What if something happens? Stanley started noticing things he hadn't before. Normal aging suddenly looked like decline. Vanessa would find articles about dementia, leave them where Stanley would see them. Articles about elderly falls injury risks. Over months, she built a case that his mother wasn't safe. Then she found a memory care facility. The best in the state. She deserves the best. $20,000 a month. Only way to afford it was to sell his mother's house. Stanley convinced his mother it was for her safety. Sold the house she'd lived in for 42 years. $280,000. Money went into a joint account with Vanessa. His mother moved to the facility a few months after the wedding. 2 weeks later, Vanessa disappeared. Cleaned out the account. Every penny. Left no forwarding address, changed her phone number. Stanley tried to track her filed police reports, but the money was in a joint account. Technically legal. His mother died 6 months later. Stanley's voice cracked. She kept asking when she could go home. I kept telling her soon, but there was no home anymore and no money to get her one. I closed my eyes. I'm sorry. Mom was fine, Mrs. Bennett. A little forgetful, but fine. She didn't need that place. She needed her home. He paused. Whatever Vanessa is telling your son about you, don't believe it. Document everything. She'll start small. Little comments about you forgetting things, being tired. Then she'll escalate. Thank you for telling me. Stop her, Stanley said. Please don't let her do to another family what she did to mine. I hung up, sat there staring at the phone. Tom brought me water. I drank it, dialed the second number. George Murphy answered immediately. George Murphy. I introduced myself. Same opening. He sighed. Vanessa Cortland. Yeah, I've been waiting for someone to call. George was 61. His story was different, but the pattern was the same. Met Vanessa at his father's funeral in early 2021. She was there supporting a friend, she said. Found George afterward. Expressed condolences. Said she understood grief. Said she'd lost someone too. They talked for hours. She helped him through the darkest time. Started dating a month later. His friends said it was too soon. He didn't care. Vanessa made the grief bearable. Married 8 months later. His father had owned a small auto repair shop for 40 years. George inherited it, but didn't want to run it. Too many memories. Vanessa suggested selling. It's too much stress. Sell it. We'll take the money, travel, heal together, start fresh. Made sense to George at the time. Sold the shop for $195,000. Money went into a joint account. 3 days after the check cleared, Vanessa was gone. Completely vanished. George tracked her through credit card records to Costa Rica. By the time he got there, the money was gone, laundered through multiple accounts, impossible to recover. She targets men with aging parents and family assets, George said. That's her specialty. She researches them, first knows everything before she even introduces herself. He paused. Does your son have access to your house, your finances? Not yet, but she's been setting the stage. Then you have time. Stop her before she gets him to sign anything. After I hung up, Tom and I sat in silence. Dennis suspected all of this. Tom said finally. He came to me 6 months before he died. Asked me to help him. Said he had a buddy, a private investigator. Peter Coleman. They were working together. Why didn't Dennis tell me? He said he needed ironclad proof. Said Brian was so in love he'd never believe it otherwise. Tom pulled out a business card from his desk drawer. Peter's been waiting. Call him. I took the card. Peter Coleman, Private Investigations. A local number. First, I need to go to the bank. First National was across town. I drove there with Dennis's investigation file on the passenger seat. The small wooden box with the key in my purse. The bank was busy. Friday afternoon, people cashing checks, making deposits, normal business. I asked for access to the safe deposit boxes. The manager, a woman in her 50s, led me to the vault. Box 447. The key fit perfectly. Inside was a single envelope. I opened it. Stock certificates in a protective sleeve. Documentation. A letter from Dennis. Carol, I bought this stock as a favor to a patient in '94. His son was starting a tech company and needed investors. I gave him $5,000, never expecting anything. The patient died the next year, and I honestly forgot about these certificates. Found them last month while organizing files. Looked up the company and nearly fell over. This is worth more than we ever saved. This is for you. For our future, for security. If you're reading this from the safe deposit box, something happened to me. Sell these when you're ready. Live well, travel. Stay independent. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. You're taken care of. Dennis. I took the certificates to the bank manager. Can you tell me what these are worth? She researched on her computer. Her eyes widened. Mrs. Bennett Tech Core Solutions went public last year. These shares are currently valued at approximately $342,000. I sat down. Just sat. The manager brought me water. Are you all right? My husband bought these. She pulled up records. Purchased May '94 for $5,000. The company remained private for 30 years, then went public. Stock price has been climbing. $342,000. Dennis left me financial security I never knew existed. I had resources now. Power. Options. I could fight Vanessa on equal footing. Saturday morning, I met Peter Coleman at a coffee shop near the hospital. Tom had called him, set it up. Peter was 55, graying, methodical-looking former detective. He had folders with him, sat across from me in the booth. Dennis was my friend. When I heard about his death, I wondered if Vanessa would make her move. You kept investigating. Dennis made me promise not to contact you directly unless Vanessa acted against you. He didn't want to alarm you with unproven suspicions. Peter opened his folder. But I kept watching. He showed me printouts. Digital footprint from the last 3 months. Vanessa active on caregiver forums under a fake name. Posts asking how to convince resistant elderly people they need help. Questions about assisted living facilities, memory care costs. Property browsing history. Costa Rica real estate. Financial investigation. Credit cards in Brian's name. 3 cards. $32,000 total debt. Charges for designer clothes, expensive restaurants, luxury hotel in Paris. Brian's salary as an office manager is $65,000 a year, Peter said. Not enough to support this lifestyle. She's living on borrowed money. Money he doesn't even know he owes yet. Peter laid out a projected timeline based on previous victims. Phase 1, Paris trip. Build the dream. Make Brian feel inadequate. Phase 2, next 2 or 3 months she'll start concerns about you. Suggest you're declining. Phase 3, 4 to 6 months, build the case for assisted living. Phase 4, 6 to 8 months, convince Brian to sell your house. My house is paid off. Worth $320,000. Exactly. Her total take would be over $350,000. Peter closed the folder. She's in setup phase now. When they get back from Paris, she'll start the campaign in earnest. Can the police stop her? Not yet. She hasn't committed a crime in this state. The previous scams were in Arizona and Florida. Until she actually takes money or commits fraud here, police can't act. So we wait for her to hurt us. We build the case now. Document everything. When she makes her move, we're ready. Peter leaned forward. And Brian has to see the truth himself. If you just tell him, she'll convince him you're paranoid. He has to discover it. I understood. Brian wouldn't believe me without proof he found himself. That evening I sat at my kitchen table, made a list of everything I'd noticed from Vanessa over 2 years. 2 months ago, Brian asking where I keep the house deed. 6 weeks ago, Vanessa taking photos of every room during a visit. 1 month ago, Brian asking if I'd forgotten about lunch plans we never made. 3 weeks ago, Vanessa commenting how tired I seemed. 2 weeks ago, a brochure for Sunset Hills Senior Living falling from Vanessa's purse. The pattern was there, had been building for months. Vanessa was creating a narrative that I was declining, preparing Brian to believe his mother needed help. I thought about the stock certificates, about why Dennis kept them in the bank but hid the investigation file in the car. The answer was obvious. The bank was fireproof, secure, the safest place for something valuable. But the car was Dennis's private space. Vanessa never went in the garage, never showed interest in his tools or his work. She stayed in the house. The car was where Dennis could hide something he didn't want her to find. He thought of everything. I closed my notebook. Outside the sun was setting. Spring evening, warm and quiet. Dennis protected me in every way possible. Left me money, left me evidence, left me people who would help. Now I had to protect Brian. Fan two sous that duc foi by. They came back from Paris on a Tuesday. Both tanned. Brian looked tired despite the vacation. Stress lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. I'd invited them for dinner, played the part perfectly, made pot roast, Dennis's favorite. Brian's childhood favorite, too. They arrived at 6. Vanessa in clothes I'd never seen before. Silk blouse, designer jeans, expensive bag. I hugged Brian at the door. He held on a second longer than usual. Vanessa's hug was quick, performative. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd raised Brian. The same chairs Dennis refinished 20 years ago. Vanessa controlled the conversation from the first minute. Paris was beautiful. The hotel in the Marais was stunning. They had lunch near the Louvre, dinner at a restaurant I couldn't pronounce. She painted a picture of the life they deserved. The life they should have. It was wonderful, Vanessa said, but it made me realize how much we're missing out on. Brian works so hard and we have so little to show for it. She looked at me when she said it, the meaning clear. I kept my face neutral. Past the potatoes. Brian jumped in. Mom, you should think about traveling too, seeing things. Maybe someday. Vanessa leaned forward. Carol, this house is really too big for one person. Have you thought about downsizing? Maybe something more manageable? There it was. The first direct move. I'm managing fine. This is my home. Of course, Vanessa's smile was pleasant, reasonable. We just care about your safety. The stairs, the yard work. It's a lot for someone your age. Brian nodded along. We worry about you here alone, Mom. I noticed. He said we, not I. Vanessa's words coming out of his mouth. I appreciate the concern, but I'm fine. Vanessa let it drop, but I saw the calculation in her eyes. Seeds planted. She'd push harder next time. After dinner, we moved to the living room. Coffee and the apple pie I'd made. Vanessa excused herself. Bathroom down the hall. She was gone 10 minutes. I waited 5, then excused myself, found her upstairs near Dennis's old office. The bathroom door was open and empty behind her. She jumped when she saw me. Oh, I got turned around. This house has so many rooms. The bathroom is downstairs where it's always been. She laughed, touched my arm. Of course. Silly me. Too much wine with dinner. I led her back downstairs, said nothing more. They left an hour later. Vanessa all smiles. Take care of yourself, Carol. We'll visit again soon. Brian hugged me. Goodbye. Love you, Mom. I watched them drive away, then went straight to my notebook, wrote down every detail while it was fresh. Wednesday morning, I called Brian. I need to talk to you about something. Can you come by, just you? What's it about your father? Something I found in his things. Silence on the other end. Vanessa and I don't keep secrets, Mom. This is between you and me. Please, Brian. Long pause. Okay, this afternoon. I have to tell Vanessa where I'm going. That's fine. He arrived at 3. Alone like he'd promised, but he looked nervous getting out of the car. I had coffee ready. Dennis's investigation file on the kitchen table. Brian saw it, and his shoulders went tight. Mom, if this is about the car again... Sit down, please. He sat arms crossed defensive before I'd even started. I took a breath, used my ICU nurse voice. Calm, authoritative, factual. Before I show you anything, I need you to listen. Really listen. Can you do that? This feels like an ambush. It's protection. I showed him Dennis's letter, first put it in his hands. Brian read it, color draining from his face. Dad was investigating Vanessa for 18 months before he died. His reaction was instant. Anger denial. Dad never liked her. He was paranoid about everything. This is ridiculous. I stayed calm. Look at the evidence. Spread the photos on the table. Vanessa at 2 different weddings with 2 different men. The marriage certificates. Vanessa Cortland married Stanley Wright. Vanessa Cortland married George Murphy. Brian stared at them. This could be anyone. Someone with the same name. Call them. Ask them about their wives. I handed him the paper. Phone numbers written in Dennis's careful handwriting. Stanley Wright, Phoenix. George Murphy, Tampa. You want me to call random strangers? They're not random. They were married to your wife before you. Brian stood, started pacing. This is insane. Vanessa wouldn't... She loves me. Then prove me wrong. Call them. Prove your father wrong. He grabbed the paper, crumpled it in his fist. I'm not doing this. Headed for the door. Brian, please. He turned. Why are you doing this? Can't you just let me be happy? My voice broke. Because your father died trying to protect you, and I'm not going to let his last months be for nothing. Brian slammed the door behind him. I watched him drive away. Didn't know if he'd call those numbers or go straight to Vanessa. Either way, the choice was his now. The waiting was the worst part. I sat at the kitchen table. Couldn't eat. Couldn't focus on anything. Peter called at 8 to check in. How did it go? He was angry. I don't know what he'll do. Give him time. The truth has to sink in. But time felt like it was running out. At midnight, the phone rang. Brian's name on the screen. Brian. His voice was wrecked. Raw. I called them. Mom, I called them both. He was crying. What did they say? Everything. Stanley's mother. George's father's shop. It's the same. Exactly the same story. My heart broke for him. I'm so sorry. I went home after I left your house. I was so angry. His voice shook. But I kept thinking about Dad about those marriage certificates. So I decided to test her. Just ask simple questions. What happened? I asked where she grew up, what her maiden name was. Tell me about your family. He took a shaky breath. Her answers were different. Not just a little different. Completely different from things she told me before. Different town, different college, different everything. What did you do? I pushed. Asked about the credit cards Peter found. The ones in my name I didn't know about. Brian's voice went flat. Her whole face changed, Mom. Like a mask came off. She said they were business investments. I wouldn't understand. So I asked what business. Asked her to show me. She said she didn't have to prove anything to me, that I should trust my wife. I kept pushing. Said I wanted to see the statements. They're in my name. She packed a bag right then. No more pretending. Said I was weak. Said I was just like what Dad said. Just like all of them. His voice broke. She walked out. Just got in her car and left. I've been calling her phone. She won't answer. Stay there. I'm calling Peter Coleman. I hung up and dialed Peter immediately. He answered on the first ring. I'm already tracking her through the credit cards. She checked into the airport Marriott an hour ago. She's leaving. Made multiple cash withdrawals over the last 2 hours. Got about $12,000 total. And she just booked a flight. He paused. Mexico City. 6 a.m. departure. One way. My stomach dropped. She's running. Yes, but I found something else. Vanessa Cortland is a stolen identity. Real Vanessa Cortland died in a car accident in 2018. This woman's real name is Linda Marsh. She's wanted for fraud in 2 other states under different names. Can the police stop her? I've been in contact with detectives in Arizona and Florida. They'll issue a warrant. If we move now, we can get her at the airport before she boards. What do you need Brian's cooperation? His statement about the credit card fraud. Can he do that? Yes, I'll make sure of it. At 3 in the morning, we met at my house. Peter, Brian, and me. Brian looked destroyed. Red eyes hadn't slept. He sat at the kitchen table while Peter laid out the situation. Vanessa is leaving on a 6 a.m. flight. Police are ready to arrest her on outstanding warrants, but we need your statement about the forged credit cards. This means it gets public, Peter said. You'll have to testify. Are you ready for that? Brian looked at me. What would Dad do? Your father spent his last months building a case against her. He died before he could finish it. He'd want you to stop her, not for revenge, so she doesn't do this to someone else. Brian was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Call the police. Let's go to the airport. We got in Peter's car, drove through empty streets. 4 in the morning, and the city was dark except for streetlights. Brian sat in the back seat, staring at nothing. I reached back, took his hand. He held on tight. The airport was just waking up when we arrived. Coffee shops opening fluorescent lights, harsh overhead business travelers pulling luggage looking tired. We stood behind a column near security. Peter positioned us where we could see but stay back. Police were already there. 2 detectives in plain clothes near the checkpoint. Brian hadn't spoken since we got in the car, just stared ahead. I stayed close to him. 5:30. The security line started filling. Then Vanessa appeared. 2 large suitcases, designer coat, sunglasses, despite the early hour hair, perfect. She looked like someone going on vacation. Calm, confident, phone in one hand, boarding pass in the other. She got in the security line, pulled her luggage forward. The detectives moved. Ma'am, we need to speak with you. Vanessa turned, saw them for just a second. Her face changed. Then she smiled. Is there a problem, officers? The detective showed his badge. We have a warrant for your arrest. Linda Marsh. Vanessa's smile froze. I don't know who that is. My name is Vanessa Bennett. Ma'am, please step aside. Vanessa looked around, calculating, saw the other detective blocking the exit. She ran, dropped her luggage, kicked off her heels, ran in stockings across the polished floor. Airport security caught her before she made it 20 feet. Tackled her at the departure board. She fought, kicking, screaming. Get off me. I haven't done anything. People stopped, watched, phones out. Police handcuffed her right there on the floor, read her rights while she thrashed. A detective opened her abandoned luggage right there at the security checkpoint. Inside the first suitcase were closed toiletries, normal travel items. Inside the second were stacks of cash rubber-banded. $48,000, the detective would tell us later. A passport with her photo but different name. Linda Brennan. Documents, bank account numbers, external hard drive. The detective held up the passport. Want to explain this? Vanessa spat at him. They lifted her to her feet. She was still fighting when she saw us, saw Brian standing 30 feet away, me beside him. She went completely still, then her face transformed. Pure rage. You. She lunged toward him. Police held her back. You did this. Brian flinched. You're pathetic. Vanessa screamed. Weak, stupid, just like the others. You really thought someone like me would want you? You're nothing. Nothing. I stepped in front of Brian. Not much, just enough. Vanessa turned on me. And you interfering old woman. This was mine. My score. 3 years I spent on this. You should have minded your own business and died already. Her voice echoed through the terminal. People staring, recording. I didn't react. Just stood there. Kept my hand on Brian's arm. Police dragged Vanessa away. She was still screaming threats, her voice fading as they took her through security doors. Then she was gone. Brian stood frozen, shaking. Let's go home, I said. 2 weeks later, we were at the police station giving formal statements. Detective Ramirez explained what they'd found. Vanessa's real name was Linda Marsh. Born in Ohio, started running cons at 20. Small scale at first, graduated to identity theft and elder fraud. Vanessa Cortland was a stolen identity. Real Vanessa Cortland died in a car accident. Linda stole her identity and used it for the last 6 years. 5 previous victims they'd found so far. 2 before Stanley, the pattern going back 8 years. Charges filed in 3 states. Arizona, Florida, and here. Identity theft, fraud theft by deception, forgery. The prosecutor expected a plea deal. 12 to 15 years federal prison. Stanley Wright and George Murphy's cases were reopened with new evidence. They might recover some funds through civil suits. Brian's credit card debt was mostly forgiven. Fraud claims approved. 1 month later, Brian showed up at my door with 2 suitcases. "Can I stay here just for a while?" Of course. He took his old room. Same room from high school. Posters still on the walls, football trophies on the shelf. Divorce was granted. Annulment, actually. Marriage never legally valid. Vanessa married under a stolen identity. Brian started therapy. Twice a week, Tuesday and Thursday evenings. Some days he was okay, made breakfast, helped around the house, smiled occasionally. Some days he barely spoke, stayed in his room, came out only for meals. I didn't push, just kept the space safe, made his favorite foods, left lights on, kept coffee ready. Years as a nurse taught me about healing. It's not linear, it's messy, it takes time. 2 months after the airport, the prosecutor called. Vanessa took the plea deal. 12 years federal prison. I told Brian over dinner. He just nodded, didn't say anything. That Saturday I found him in the garage. He was sitting on Dennis's old work stool, holding the work journal, tears running down his face. I stood in the doorway, waited. "I found this on the workbench." His voice was thick. Started reading. He opened to a page from years ago. Dennis's handwriting filled it. "Taught Brian to change the oil today. He's 12, old enough to learn. His hands are still small but careful. He listened to every word. So proud of him." Brian's hands shook, holding the page. Another entry from later. "Brian came by to help with the engine rebuild. We worked all afternoon, barely talked, didn't need to. These are the days I'll remember." "I barely remember this," Brian said. "Working on the car with him. I was so young. I sat on the workbench beside him. He loved those days. Talked about them all the time. I sold his car." Brian's voice broke. The car he spent 20 years on for $15,000 for a trip to impress a woman who was planning to destroy our family. "You didn't know. I should have known. Dad tried to warn me. Those last few months he kept asking about Vanessa, about our plans, about money. I thought he was being controlling." He wiped his eyes. "Last conversation I had with him, we argued about her. I told him to back off, to let me live my life. He died a week later. I never apologized. My throat was tight. He knew you loved him." Brian shook his head. "How could he? I chose her over him, over you, over everything he taught me." I pulled out the letter Dennis had left in the car, the one about needing proof before telling Brian. I'd been carrying it with me, waiting for the right moment. Read this. Brian took it, read Dennis's words about not wanting to break his heart without ironclad proof, about loving him, about Brian being a victim too. He understood, I said. He knew Vanessa was good at what she did. He didn't blame you. Brian broke down completely. Deep sobs that shook his whole body. I held him. All those years being a mother, holding my son through every pain. This one cut the deepest. We sat in the garage for a long time, surrounded by Dennis's tools, his workbench, his radio, the smell of motor oil and old leather. Eventually, Brian's tears stopped. He wiped his face with his sleeve. I wish the car was still here. His voice was raw. I'd learn everything about it the way Dad wanted me to. I didn't say anything, just squeezed his shoulder. He closed the journal carefully, put it back on the workbench, exactly where Dennis had left it. We walked back to the house. Evening coming on spring, turning to summer. The air warm and thick. Inside, I made dinner. Brian set the table without being asked. The house felt different. Not empty anymore. Not quite whole yet either, but healing slowly. I paid off Brian's remaining debt the week after Vanessa was sentenced. $5,000. What the fraud claims didn't cover. Wrote the check and didn't mention it again. The stock certificates from Dennis gave me choices I never expected. $342,000. More money than we'd saved in our entire marriage. I thought about what to do with it. Stanley Wright. His mother dying, heartbroken, in a memory care facility she never needed. George Murphy. His father's shop sold. 40 years of work gone. I sent them each a check for $10,000. Attached a note. For your mother's memory, from someone who understands. Carol Bennett. For Stanley. Similar words for George. For myself, I decided to stay in the house. Maybe travel a little, small trips, nothing fancy. Stay independent like Dennis wanted. Fun back on đường Hàn. 2 months after the airport on a Saturday morning, I heard an engine rumble outside. Deep, powerful, familiar. The sound reached into my chest and squeezed. I looked out the kitchen window. The Shelby sat in my driveway. Burgundy paint gleaming in the sun. Tom Graves behind the wheel. Brian was upstairs. I heard his door open footsteps on the stairs. He'd heard it too. We stepped onto the porch together. Tom climbed out smiling at our stunned faces. Bringing her home where she belongs. Brian stood frozen, unable to speak. Tom walked toward us, keys extended. This was never mine, Mrs. Bennett. Dennis built it for you. I tried to find words. Tom, you paid Brian $15,000. Tom shook his head. But this car is worth more than money. Dennis would want you to have it. Want Brian to learn it. That's what matters. Brian spoke, voice rough with emotion. I sold it. I threw it away. Tom looked at him directly. You were a victim too. Your dad knew that. That's why he built the case to protect you. We opened the garage door together. Tom backed the Shelby into its spot, the same spot it had left months earlier. The oil stain on the concrete still there, waiting. When the engine shut off, silence settled around us. Then the familiar scents returned. Motor oil, old leather, Dennis. Tom stayed for coffee, hugged us both before leaving. After he drove away, Brian and I stood in the garage, the Shelby between us. I can't believe it's back, Brian whispered. I touched the hood, felt the cool metal under my palm. Neither can I. Autumn came. The days grew shorter, mornings colder. Brian settled into a routine. Work therapy home. He'd found a job at a marketing firm downtown. Entry-level, less money than before, but honest work. 4 months had passed since the airport. 4 months of rebuilding. I watched my son heal in fragments. Some pieces came back faster than others. His smile returned first, tentative at breakfast, stronger by dinner. His confidence lagged behind. I'd catch him staring at bills, recalculating numbers, double-checking everything. Trust was the slowest to mend. The therapist said this was normal. Trauma changes pathways in the brain. New connections form slowly. Old fears don't dissolve overnight. Time and consistency were the only remedies. So I maintained our household rhythms. Dinner at 6, coffee ready by 7 each morning. Small anchors in a shifting world. On Fridays, we worked on the Shelby. Simple maintenance at first, checking fluids, polishing chrome. Eventually, we graduated to more complex tasks. Brian absorbed Dennis's journal notes like scripture, following each instruction to the letter. I'd watch his hands grow more confident on the tools, his questions become more technical. Dennis would have loved witnessing this transformation. The first weekend of November, Brian asked if we could take the Shelby to a car show in Henderson County. 40 miles away. Our longest trip in it yet. I agreed partially because I saw how much it meant to him, and partially because I was ready too. Ready to share Dennis's masterpiece with the world. We left early Saturday morning. Frost still glittered on the lawns as we rolled down Oakwood Drive. The Shelby's engine rumbled through the quiet neighborhood. Brian navigated from the passenger seat, Dennis's journal open on his lap. He'd marked the route, calculating optimal roads to showcase the car's capabilities. The highway stretched before us, empty in the early morning light. Fields and farmhouses blurred past as I gradually increased our speed. The car responded beautifully, decades melting away with each mile. Beside me, Brian relaxed into the leather seat, tension evaporating from his shoulders. For the first time in months, he looked truly at peace. We arrived at the fairgrounds just after 9. The show was already bustling, rows of classic cars gleaming in the autumn sun, enthusiasts clustered in conversation, the air scented with coffee and exhaust fumes. I parked the Shelby in our assigned spot, and immediately people began to gather. An older man in a vintage car club jacket whistled low as he circled the car. 67 Shelby GT 500, original block. Brian answered questions with growing confidence, referencing Dennis's restoration work, the sourcing of authentic parts, the hundreds of hours spent on the paint alone. I stood back watching my son step into his father's legacy. By noon, a small crowd had formed around our space. Word had spread about the museum-quality Shelby. Brian gave impromptu tours, pointing out details most people would miss. The custom stitching on the seats, the period-correct hoses under the hood, the paint mix to match the exact factory burgundy. A man approached as Brian was explaining the carburetor rebuild. Tall, well-dressed camera hanging from his neck. He listened intently, then introduced himself. James Wilson. I publish Classic Restoration magazine. This is exceptional work. Would you mind if I feature your car in next month's issue? Brian's eyes lit up. He looked to me for approval. I nodded, smiling. Dennis would be over the moon. James took dozens of photos, interviewed us both about the restoration process. I shared what I could remember of Dennis's 20-year journey. Brian filled in technical details from the journal. As James was wrapping up, he handed Brian his card. We host a major show in Phoenix each spring, by invitation only. I'd love to have this beauty there. It would be a featured vehicle. All expenses paid for transportation. Think about it, and let me know. Brian clutched the card like a lifeline. Phoenix. That's 2,000 miles from here. Yes, but what an opportunity. Your father's work deserves to be seen. We'd fly out, meet the car there. James says they'd transport it professionally. The rest of the show passed in a pleasant blur. More admirers, more questions, several offers to buy that we politely declined. By late afternoon, the Shelby had won Best in Show and People's Choice. The trophies sat in the back seat as we drove home, tangible validation of Dennis's craftsmanship. That night after dinner, Brian researched the Phoenix show on his laptop at the kitchen table. It's the biggest classic car event in the Southwest. Collectors from all over the country. Some international even. He scrolled through photos from previous years. The top restorers compete. Dad's work could hold its own against any of these. I agreed, but something nagged at my mind. Phoenix, where Stanley Wright lived, where Vanessa had claimed her first victim we knew of. The coincidence felt uncomfortable. I brushed it aside, chided myself for paranoia. Not every connection led back to her. We couldn't let her shadow touch every opportunity. The following Tuesday, I had lunch with Peter Coleman. We'd kept in touch since the arrest, meeting monthly to catch up. He'd become a friend, one of the few people who understood exactly what we'd been through. I mentioned the Phoenix show, my slight uneasiness about the location. Peter set down his sandwich. Coincidences happen, but I've learned to trust instincts in this business. Let me check out the magazine, the publisher. Make sure everything's legitimate. No harm in being careful. 2 days later, Peter called. The magazine's real. James Wilson is legitimate. Been publishing for 15 years, well respected in collector circles. The show is exactly what he said. Prestigious, selective. Your Shelby would be a highlight. Relief washed over me. Just my imagination then. Peter paused. There's something else, though. I've been monitoring Jason Parrish's movements like Ramirez suggested. He's been making trips to Phoenix, monthly since Linda's been in prison, staying 2-3 days each time. The uneasiness returned stronger now. That can't be a coincidence. Too many connections. Peter agreed. I'll dig deeper. See what he's doing there, who he's meeting. In the meantime, maybe hold off on committing to the show. I didn't mention these concerns to Brian. He was excited researching hotels near the convention center, planning which of Dennis's restoration photos to share with attendees. His enthusiasm was beautiful to witness. I wouldn't dampen it with suspicions that might prove unfounded. December arrived with an unexpected snowfall. 6 inches blanketed Oakwood Drive overnight. Through the kitchen window, I watched Brian shovel the driveway, methodical and thorough. Dennis had shoveled the same path the same way for 40 years. That evening, Peter called again, his voice tight with urgency. I need to show you something. Tonight, if possible. He arrived 20 minutes later, laptop under his arm, expression grim. Brian was upstairs showering after his therapy session. Peter and I sat at the kitchen table, voices low. He opened his laptop, turned it toward me. I've been tracking Jason Parrish's financial activities. Look at this. Bank records showed regular deposits into Parrish's account. $2,000 monthly starting the week after Vanessa's arrest. The source was listed as Phoenix Classic Car Restoration. I don't understand. Peter pulled up another screen. Phoenix Classic Car Restoration is owned by Mark Wright, Stanley Wright's son, the man Vanessa married before Brian. I felt the room tilt slightly. Mark Wright is paying Jason Parrish. Regularly. Substantially. But why? What's the connection? Peter's expression darkened. I think it's revenge. A family affair. Stanley lost everything to Vanessa. His mother died in that facility, remember? His son Mark might blame your family now, associate you with what happened. That makes no sense. We're victims too. Peter nodded. Logically, yes. But grief and anger aren't logical. Mark might see the connection differently. Linda goes to prison. Her former husband's mother has this valuable car, the same husband who exposed her. It's twisted, but there's a certain symmetry. And James Wilson. The magazine. Peter pulled up another document. James Wilson is legitimate. So is his magazine. But this invitation to Phoenix, I can't verify it came from him. The email Brian received used Wilson's name, but the domain isn't the official magazine domain. It's close, just one letter off. Easy to miss. Cold realization spread through me. It's a setup. Peter closed his laptop. I think so. The invitation, the flattery, the offer to transport the car. They want to get the Shelby to Phoenix. After that, who knows, sell it, destroy it. Hurt you through what matters most. I heard Brian's footsteps on the stairs. Peter quickly gathered his materials. Don't tell him tonight. Let him sleep. We'll figure out how to approach this tomorrow. Call me in the morning. After Peter left, I sat alone in the kitchen, mind racing. How could I tell Brian? Just when he was healing, finding joy in Dennis's legacy, reconnecting with something pure, this would crush him all over again. Make him feel hunted, targeted. Sleep evaded me that night. I lay awake, listening to the house settle the wind, rattle the windows. Dennis's absence felt particularly acute. I longed for his steady presence, his practical approach to problems. He would know exactly what to say to Brian, how to protect him while preserving his dignity. Morning came gray and subdued. Brian left early for work, kissing my cheek on his way out. I'll email Mr. Wilson today about Phoenix. Let him know we're interested. I forced a smile, said nothing, watched him drive away. I called Peter immediately. We need to be certain before saying anything to Brian. He agreed. I'll contact James Wilson directly. Verify whether he actually met you at the show, issued the invitation. Meanwhile, we should look deeper into Mark Wright. Understand exactly what we're dealing with. While Peter investigated, I tried to maintain normalcy. Made beef stew for dinner, Brian's favorite. Asked about his day, listened to his plans for the weekend. He wanted to change the Shelby's spark plugs following a detailed entry in Dennis's journal. I agreed, hiding the turmoil beneath my calm exterior. Peter called back that evening. Brian was in the shower, giving me privacy to take the call. I checked with Wilson. He was indeed at the Henderson County show. Remember seeing the Shelby, talking with you both. But he never offered to feature it in the magazine or invited you to Phoenix. Never gave you his card. My stomach clenched. So it was all fake. The man who approached us, the card, the email. All part of an elaborate scheme. Yes. And there's more. Mark Wright has a restoration business, but it's struggling. He's in debt. Significant debt. But recently he paid cash for a warehouse outside Phoenix. No mortgage. And he's been hiring transport specialists. For moving cars, Peter's voice was grim. Yes. And James Wilson confirmed something else. The real Phoenix show isn't until April. The February date in the fake invitation doesn't exist. I hung up, mind reeling with implications. They weren't just after the car. This was calculated malice. They wanted us to discover the deception only after the Shelby was gone. Wanted us to feel the same loss Stanley had felt. An eye for an eye, even though we'd done nothing wrong. Brian emerged from the shower, hair damp, wearing an old t-shirt of Dennis's that he'd claimed. He sat beside me on the sofa, opened his laptop. I just sent the email to Mr. Wilson. Attached some of Dad's best restoration photos. Told him we'd be honored to participate. I placed my hand over his, closed the laptop gently. Brian, there's something I need to tell you. Something difficult. His expression shifted immediately, wariness replacing enthusiasm. What's wrong? I explained everything. The fake James Wilson. Mark Wright's connection to Vanessa through his father Stanley. The payments to Jason Parrish. The non-existent February show. With each revelation, Brian's face hardened, the light in his eyes dimming. When I finished, he was silent for a long moment, just staring at his hands. Then he stood abruptly, paced across the living room. It never ends, does it? They'll always find ways to hurt us, to take what matters, to destroy what Dad built. I moved to him, placed my hands on his shoulders. They haven't taken anything yet. We caught this in time. But Brian pulled away, anger flashing across his features. Don't you see they've already taken something? My trust, my hope. I thought we were moving forward. I thought we were healing. I reached for him again, but he shook his head. I need air. Going for a walk. He grabbed his jacket, slammed the door behind him. I watched through the window as he strode down Oakwood Drive, shoulders hunched against the December cold. He didn't return for 3 hours. I sat in the kitchen, nursing cold tea, jumping at every sound. When he finally came back, his eyes were red, his expression calmer but weighted with sadness. I made fresh tea, sat across from him at the table. Neither of us spoke for several minutes. What do we do now? Brian's question hung in the space between us. I've been thinking about that, I said. We have options. We can report this to Detective Ramirez. Let law enforcement handle it. Or we can confront them directly. Let them know we've discovered their plan. Brian stared into his tea. Neither of those solves the real problem. They'll try again. Different approach, different time. As long as the Shelby exists, as long as it matters to us, they'll target it. Target us. What are you suggesting? I asked, though I feared I already knew. His eyes met mine, resolve hardening in their depths. We sell the car, on our terms. To someone who will appreciate it, preserve Dad's work. We use the money how Dad would want. To secure our future. To help others like us. My protest rose immediately. But your father spent 20 years on that car. It was his dream for us to enjoy it together. His legacy. Brian's voice softened. Dad's legacy isn't the car, Mom. It's what he taught me while building it. The values, the craftsmanship, the patience. We don't need the physical object to honor that. I felt tears gather. You're suggesting we give up the very thing he wanted us to have. The thing Tom returned to us. The thing that's brought you back to life these past months. Brian reached across the table, took my hands in his. I'm suggesting we take control. Make the choice ourselves instead of living in fear. Transform the threat into something positive. Dad would understand that. He was always practical, always thinking of our security first. That night I couldn't sleep. Brian's words echoed in my mind. Was he right? Was this the best way forward? I wandered downstairs in the darkness, made my way to the garage. Stood looking at the Shelby, its curves shadowed and mysterious in the dim light. I ran my hand along the fender, feeling the flawless paint beneath my fingertips. Dennis had applied each coat with meticulous care, sanding between layers, polishing until it gleamed. 20 years of weekends, thousands of hours, all for this moment of perfection. Could I let it go? Could I watch someone else drive it away, knowing I'd never again sit where Dennis's hands had gripped the wheel, never again feel the engine's vibration through the floorboards? It seemed impossible. Yet Brian's logic was sound. The car had become a target, a vulnerability. As long as we had it, we'd be looking over our shoulders. Dawn was breaking when I returned to the kitchen. Brian was already there, coffee brewing dark circles under his eyes, suggesting he'd slept as poorly as I had. We regarded each other silently, understanding flowing between us without words. I called Tom Graves after breakfast, asked if he'd help us sell the Shelby, properly to the right buyer for its true value. There was a long pause on the line. Tom's voice, when he finally spoke, was careful. Are you sure about this, Carol? Both of you? Brian took the phone. We're sure, Tom. We've thought it through. It's the right decision. Tom agreed to help, said he'd reach out to serious collectors who would respect Dennis's craftsmanship. No auction houses. No publicity. A private, dignified sale. The next few days passed in a strange limbo. We continued our routines, work, dinner, evening television. But an undercurrent of anticipation hummed beneath the ordinary moments. Tom called regularly with updates. Interest was high. Several collectors had requested detailed photos documentation of the restoration. 1 week before Christmas, Tom arrived at our door, expression solemn. I found the right buyer. William Harrington, retired surgeon from New Hampshire, collects only the finest examples of American muscle cars. Has a climate-controlled showroom where each vehicle is displayed and maintained. He's offering $175,000. Brian and I exchanged glances. It was slightly less than the car's full value, but the situation seemed ideal. A knowledgeable owner, a proper facility, regular maintenance. Yes, I said. If he'll agree to one condition. Brian looked surprised. I hadn't discussed this with him yet. He has to let us visit. Once a year. See the car, touch it, know it's being cared for properly. Tom nodded. I'll ask him. I think he'll agree. He understands what this car means. He's not just buying metal and paint. He's becoming a custodian of Dennis's vision. Dr. Harrington agreed to our condition. The sale was arranged for December 23rd. He would fly in, complete the transaction, and professional transporters would take the Shelby to New Hampshire the following week. Everything was settled, logical, civilized. Yet as the day approached, a heaviness settled over the house. The evening of December 22nd, Brian and I spent hours in the garage. Not working on the car, just being with it. I sat in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel, memorizing every detail. The way the gauges caught the light, the smell of the leather, the perfect spacing of the control knobs. Brian sat beside me, Dennis's journal open in his lap. "One last time," he asked. I nodded, started the engine. We backed out of the garage into the winter night. Stars glittered overhead, breath fogging the windows until the heater caught up. We drove slowly through our sleeping neighborhood, then onto empty country roads. The Shelby performed flawlessly as always. Engine purring, transmission shifting smoothly, steering responsive to the lightest touch. Dennis's craftsmanship singing in every component. We drove for an hour, mostly silent, occasionally pointing out landmarks we'd passed on previous trips. When we returned home, we sat in the idling car for several minutes, neither wanting to be the first to end this final journey. Eventually, I turned off the engine. The sudden silence felt profound, almost sacred. "Tomorrow we say goodbye," Brian said. His voice caught slightly on the last word. I reached over, squeezed his hand. Not to the memories, not to what matters most. He nodded, understanding what I couldn't fully articulate. Dennis lived in more than the car. He lived in us, in our resilience, in the values that had guided us through this ordeal. Dr. Harrington arrived promptly at 10 the next morning. Tall, silver-haired, with the precise movements of someone accustomed to delicate work. He greeted us warmly, then asked to see the Shelby. We led him to the garage, watched his expression as he took in Dennis's masterpiece. His appreciation was genuine, evident in the reverent way he circled the car, the knowledgeable questions he asked, the admiration in his eyes as he examined specific details. "This is museum quality," he said, kneeling to inspect the undercarriage. "Your husband was an artist, Mrs. Bennett. A true craftsman." We completed the paperwork at the kitchen table. The check, when he handed it to me, felt surreal. $175,000, a fortune by our family's standards, yet somehow inadequate for what we were giving up. Dr. Harrington seemed to sense my ambivalence. "I promise you the car will be cherished, maintained exactly as your husband would have wanted, and you're welcome any time. Call first so I can be sure to be there, but visit as often as you wish." His sincerity was palpable, comforting. I nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in my throat. We walked him back to the garage. He didn't start the Shelby, said he'd prefer his first drive to be at his home in New Hampshire. Somehow that felt right. Our last memory would be of us behind the wheel, not watching someone else drive away. The transporters would come December 27th. 4 more days with Dennis's creation. After Dr. Harrington left, Brian and I sat at the kitchen table, the check between us. So much money, yet I felt no excitement, no relief. Just a hollow ache where certainty should have been. Brian touched the check gently. "What do we do with it?" I'd been considering this question for days. Divided 3 ways, I think. 1/3 to secure our future. 1/3 to help Stanley and George. They lost everything to Vanessa, too. And 1/3 to establish a foundation for other victims of elder fraud. In Dennis's name. Brian's eyes filled. He would have loved that. Using this to help others. To prevent what happened to us from happening again. I nodded, vision blurring with my own tears. "We'll call it the Dennis Bennett Protection Fund. Help families recognize the warning signs, provide resources for investigation, support those recovering from financial exploitation." That night we decorated our Christmas tree, a tradition we'd maintained even through the darkest days after Dennis's death. Each ornament held a memory. The tiny baseball mitt from Brian's Little League years, the nurse's cap from my graduation, the miniature car Dennis had found that resembled the Shelby. We hung them carefully, deliberately, honoring our shared history. Christmas morning dawned clear and cold. We exchanged simple gifts, a new watch for Brian, gardening tools for me. Then Brian handed me a small box I hadn't noticed under the tree. One more, from Dad in a way. Inside was a silver pendant, a perfect miniature of the Shelby crafted in exquisite detail. "I had a jeweler make it," Brian explained, "from one of Dad's detailed drawings in the journal. So you'd always have the car with you." I fastened it around my neck, the metal cool against my skin. It wasn't the same as having the real Shelby in our garage, but it was a tangible connection, a piece of Dennis's dream I could carry always. December 26th, I received a call from Peter Coleman, his voice tight with urgency. "I've been monitoring Mark Wright and Jason Parrish. They've gone silent. No electronic communication, no credit card activity. Nothing for 3 days. I don't like it, Carol. People planning something don't usually go dark unless they're making a move." Alarm flared through me. The transporters aren't coming until tomorrow. Should we call the police? Peter hesitated. We don't have proof of any crime, just suspicious patterns. Detective Ramirez might listen, but officially there's not much they can do yet. What then? Peter's voice hardened with resolve. I'm coming over. Tonight. I'll watch the house, keep an eye on the garage. If they're planning something, they'll need to scout first. Figure out access points, security measures. I'll spot them before they make their move. True to his word, Peter arrived after dark. Parked his unmarked car across the street, a thermos of coffee on the passenger seat, binoculars in hand. I offered him our guest room, but he declined. Better vantage point from outside, he said. I can see all approaches to the house. That night, sleep came fitfully. Every creak of the house, every distant car engine jolted me awake. I checked my phone repeatedly, expecting Peter's call. Nothing came. Just the normal sounds of a winter night. Wind in the eaves, branches scraping against windows, the furnace cycling on and off. Dawn broke pale and hesitant through gathering clouds. I made coffee, took a mug out to Peter. His car was frosted over breath, visible in the cold morning air. Quiet night. He nodded, sipping gratefully at the hot liquid. No movement, no suspicious vehicles. Maybe I was overreacting. The transporters were scheduled to arrive at noon. By 10, snow had begun to fall. Light at first, then heavier, blanketing Oakwood Drive in pristine white. Brian shoveled the driveway, cleared a path to the garage. We moved through these preparations mechanically, neither mentioning what would happen when the transport truck arrived. At 11:30, Peter's phone rang. His expression shifted as he listened, tension gathering in his jaw. Understood. I'll tell them. Keep me posted. He hung up, turned to us. That was my contact at the transport company. Their truck broke down 50 miles out. Mechanical issue. They've sent a replacement, but it won't be here until tomorrow morning. Another night with this Shelby. Another night of vulnerability. I saw the calculation in Peter's eyes, knew he was thinking the same thing. If Wright and Parrish were planning something, the delay gave them additional opportunity. Another cover of darkness. Another chance to strike. I'll stay again tonight, Peter said. No arguments. We nodded, grateful for his vigilance. The snow continued through the afternoon, accumulating on roads, weighing down tree branches. By evening, 6 inches had fallen, with more forecast overnight. The world outside our windows had transformed into a muffled white landscape. After dinner, the three of us played cards at the kitchen table, a forced normalcy conversation deliberately light. Around 9, the power flickered once, twice, then stabilized. Winter storm, Peter said. Puts pressure on the grid. Might want to locate flashlights just in case. We found candles, matches, battery-operated lanterns. Basic preparations for a potential outage. Outside, the wind had picked up, driving snow against the windows in rhythmic gusts. Peter checked all doors and windows, verified the alarm system was functioning, then returned to his car. Bundle up, he advised. If the power goes, so does the heat. Brian and I sat in the living room, a fire crackling in the hearth. Extra blankets piled nearby. Neither of us suggested going to bed, though the clock showed nearly midnight. Some unspoken agreement kept us there together, watchful. 10 minutes later, it happened. The lights went out all at once. The sudden darkness was absolute, broken only by the orange glow of the fireplace. The furnace fell silent. All the ambient hums and clicks of modern life ceased, leaving only the storm's voice outside. I fumbled for the lantern we'd placed on the coffee table, switched it on. Its beam created a small circle of visibility in the blackness. Brian, right here, Mom. He moved closer, our shoulders touching on the sofa. The alarm system, I realized. It would be offline now. Vulnerable. A sharp knock at the front door made us both jump. Peter's voice called through the wood. Power's out on the whole block. I'm coming in. We heard his key in the lock. We'd given him a spare earlier. Then the door opened, bringing a swirl of snow and frigid air. He stomped snow from his boots in the entryway, his figure backlit briefly by headlights passing on the street. All the houses are dark. Perfect cover for anyone wanting to make a move. I'm staying inside with you tonight. His tone left no room for argument. We set up a makeshift command post in the living room. Peter positioned himself where he could see both the front door and the hallway leading to the kitchen and garage access. The fire provided minimal heat and light. We huddled in coats and blankets, speaking little, listening intently to the sounds of the storm. Around 2 in the morning, I heard it. A faint metallic scrape from the direction of the garage. Different from the wind's howl or branches striking the roof. Deliberate. Human. Peter was already on his feet, hand raised for silence. He moved toward the kitchen steps, careful and silent. Brian and I followed, keeping close to the walls where the floorboards were less likely to creak. In the kitchen, we paused, listening. Another sound. Glass tinkling softly. The small window high on the garage's back wall. Someone was breaking in. Peter drew his gun. I hadn't realized he was armed, and motioned us back. "Stay here," his gesture said clearly. I shook my head, pointed to myself, then the door. My house, my car, my right to defend them. For a moment I thought he'd refuse. Then he nodded once, positioned himself to the right of the door that connected kitchen to garage. I took the left side. Brian stayed back, lantern dimmed to its lowest setting. We heard movement inside the garage. Multiple footsteps. Hushed voices. 2 people, maybe 3. The sound of the Shelby's door opening. My anger flared hot and righteous. Not just thieves. Violators. Invading Dennis's sacred space. Touching his legacy without permission or reverence. Peter held up 3 fingers. Counting down. 2, 1. He flung the door open, gun raised. "Police, don't move." The lantern beam swept the garage, illuminating the scene in stark relief. 2 men stood frozen by the Shelby. One already seated behind the wheel, the other halfway through the passenger door. Their faces registered shock, then calculation. The driver, younger, wiry, with Dennis's journal open on his lap, reacted first. He lunged for something in his jacket. Peter's voice hardened. "Hands where I can see them." Now, the man slowly raised his arms, empty hands splayed. "Jason Parrish, I presume Peter kept his gun steady, and Mark Wright beside you." The second man glared, said nothing. I stepped forward, lantern held high to better see their faces. "How did you find us? How did you know about the car?" Wright's expression twisted with bitter satisfaction. "My father lost everything because of your husband. His home, his money. His mother died in that place. All because Dennis Bennett couldn't mind his own business. So this is revenge." Brian's voice came from behind me, steadier than I expected. Wright's gaze shifted to him. "Complicated, isn't it? Your wife ruined my father's life. Your father ruined hers. Now your father's gone, but his precious car is still here. Seems unfair somehow." Parrish laughed, a harsh sound in the cold garage. "We were going to take it to Phoenix. Let you wonder what happened the way my sister had to wonder what happened to her life. She's rotting in prison because of you people." Peter stepped closer, gun unwavering. "Your sister is in prison because she committed multiple frauds, stole from vulnerable people, broke the law repeatedly. She earned every day of her sentence. Now both of you out of the car." Slowly, Wright complied reluctantly. Parrish followed Dennis's journal, still clutched in his hand. Brian noticed, stepped forward. "That's my father's. You don't touch that." Parrish smirked, made to toss the journal aside casually. Brian caught it mid-air, held it against his chest like armor. I looked at these men, these would-be thieves of memory and meaning, their faces twisted with entitlement and grievance. The absurdity of their logic struck me suddenly, viscerally. No one won in this cycle of revenge. Not Stanley Wright, not Linda Marsh, not these angry men before us. Not even Dennis, despite his posthumous victory in exposing Vanessa's scheme. The only path forward lay in breaking the cycle, in choosing a different response than they expected or understood. "Mr. Wright," I said, keeping my voice level, "I'm sorry about your grandmother. Truly, what happened to her was wrong. But this, breaking in, stealing, continuing the harm, it doesn't undo that wrong. It just creates new ones." Wright's expression flickered uncertainty, replacing some of the rage. "Your wife targeted my son because he had an aging parent and assets she could exploit. My husband discovered this and tried to protect us. None of us asked to be part of her schemes. We're all victims here in different ways." Parrish spat on the garage floor. "Save your speech, lady. We came for the car. We're taking it. Simple as that." Peter stepped forward, handcuffs appearing in his free hand. "Actually, you're going to jail. Breaking and entering. Attempted grand theft auto. Conspiracy. Plenty to keep you occupied for the next few years." As Peter secured the men, blue lights suddenly flashed outside, slices of color penetrating the garage windows, radio-static car doors slamming. Detective Ramirez appeared in the doorway, uniform dusted with snow, flashlight beams sweeping the scene. "Power came back an hour ago," he explained. "Alarm system reactivated and immediately triggered. Patrol responded to the alert. The next hour passed in a blur of official statements, evidence collection, and formal arrests. Wright and Parrish were led away in separate patrol cars, defiance gradually giving way to the grim reality of their situation. Ramirez assured us they'd face significant charges. The premeditation, the interstate elements, the connection to Linda Marsh's previous crimes, all strengthened the case against them. By dawn, the house was quiet again. Peter had gone with Ramirez to finalize paperwork. Brian and I sat at the kitchen table, exhausted but too wired for sleep. The Shelby waited in the garage, undamaged, still ours for a few more hours. "What do you think Dad would say about all this?" Brian's question hung in the air between us. I considered it carefully, trying to channel Dennis's practical wisdom. He'd say we did the right thing, protecting ourselves, following the legal process, not taking revenge when we had the chance. Brian nodded slowly, and about selling the car I smiled, surprising myself with the certainty I suddenly felt. He'd understand. He didn't build it to become a source of fear or conflict. He built it for joy, for connection. If it can't provide that anymore, he'd want us to let it go, find security and peace another way. The transport truck arrived at noon, exactly 24 hours later than originally scheduled. The driver, a specialist in handling valuable vehicles, treated the Shelby with appropriate reverence, inspecting it carefully before loading, securing it with additional straps against the winter roads, promising updates throughout the journey to New Hampshire. We stood in the driveway as the truck pulled away, the Shelby visible through the transport's side windows. Neither of us spoke. Words seemed inadequate for the complex emotions of the moment. Relief, sadness, closure, hope. All intertwined like the strands of a complicated knot finally coming untangled. The check from Dr. Harrington was deposited the following day. As agreed, we divided it 3 ways. Established the Dennis Bennett Protection Fund with a generous initial endowment. Sent substantial amounts to Stanley Wright and George Murphy with letters explaining our actions and offering reconciliation. The remainder we invested carefully, securing our financial future as Dennis had always wanted. Spring arrived early that year. By March, crocuses pushed through. The last patches of snow in the front yard. The garage stood empty now, but not abandoned. Brian had begun using Dennis's workbench for his own projects. Small carpentry at first, then more ambitious undertakings. Following the same principles of patience and precision his father had embodied. Dr. Harrington sent photos monthly. The Shelby in its new climate-controlled home, gleaming under museum lighting. Details of the maintenance schedule, the gentle exercise drives on New Hampshire's scenic roads. He kept his promise honored. Dennis's craftsmanship treated the car as the work of art it was. In May, I planted a garden, something I'd never had time for during my nursing career. Tomatoes and peppers, herbs along the back fence, flowers in the borders. Brian built raised beds using Dennis's tools, following designs he found in an old book on his father's shelf. We worked side by side, creating something new from the resources Dennis had left us. One evening, as twilight gathered and fireflies began their dance above the new garden, Brian sat beside me on the porch steps. The warm air carried the scent of freshly mown grass and distant barbecues. Normal suburban sounds surrounded us. Children playing, dogs barking, the occasional passing car. "You know what I realized today?" Brian's voice was thoughtful, measured. "Dad would have loved all this. Not just the car or the garage or any one thing. This. Us. Moving forward. Building something meaningful from what he left behind." I nodded, feeling the truth of his words settle deep in my heart. Dennis's legacy wasn't the Shelby or the stock certificates or even the investigation that had protected us from Vanessa. His true legacy was teaching us resilience, the capacity to face darkness and emerge stronger, the wisdom to recognize what matters most. The pendant around my neck caught the last rays of sunlight, the silver miniature of the Shelby gleaming against my blouse. A reminder not of what we'd lost, but of what we'd gained through the journey. Understanding, strength, the unbreakable bonds of family that transcended even death. Dennis was still protecting us in his way, still guiding us forward, and we were honoring him with every step we took into this new chapter. Every day we chose hope over fear, growth over stagnation, love over bitterness. That was the real restoration project, not of metal and chrome, but of hearts and lives. A masterpiece worthy of the man who had loved us enough to prepare for everything, even his absence.